Learn Persian with Chai and Conversation. Growing Up Irooni interview with Representative Anna Eskamani. Okay, Anna Eskamani, June, welcome to the program. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I
Big
know.
fan, longtime
Me too.
listener. And so thanks so much for having me.
Me too. I feel like we've been family for a long time, so I'm so excited to finally talk to you. And I have so many questions. I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. So first, can you give a little introduction to who you are and where you are and what you do?
Oh, I love to. So again, my name is Anna V. Eskamani. I am first generation Iranian-American. I'm born and raised in Orlando, Florida, where I currently live. I'm actually joining you from the state capital in Florida, Tallahassee, because I'm also a state representative and was first elected in 2018, becoming the first and so far only Iranian-American elected in any public office in Florida. I know there will be more. And grew up in a working class family. My dad's family's from Tabriz. My mom's family's from Tehran. And I have a twin sister and a big brother. And I worked in reproductive rights before I ran for office. So I have a long history in advocacy and of course, women's issues as well.
Yes, exactly. So I want to get into that as well. But can you tell me more about your mother? You and your twin sister talk about your mother so often, and she's such a big part of your story. So I'd love to honor her with this conversation. If you can tell us about her and
I would be so
yeah.
honored to do that. I mentioned my parents were both originally born and raised in Iran. They came to the United States at very different times in their lives, and they met working at the same donut shop in Orlando.
Oh my
So a
gosh.
true American love story. And my dad was actually really shy to share parts of his identity for fear of prejudice and things like that.
What year was this?
So, this was in the 80s,
Okay,
so, like, mid-80s, yeah, so
post-revolution.
post-revolution, correct. My dad came in, right around the revolution. My mom came in 1976.
Okay.
But so, like so many Iranians, the plan was to come to the United States for education, then go back to Iran, but of course, that just never happened with the revolution. And so, when they met, it was still a contentious time period. I think my dad was just always more sensitive to that. He wanted to really blend in and not stick out, if you will. My mom, in contrast, was loud and proud, and she recognized my dad's accent and asked where home was from him. They started speaking Farsi, and the rest was history. And so, we made Orlando our home, and my, parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, and my mom in particular ended up eventually working at Kmart, just managing different departments at Kmart. And unfortunately, she was diagnosed with cancer when I was about 10 years old and then passed away in 2004 after
Mhm.
a courageous battle. And so she is a really big part of my story. I only knew her for about 13 years of my life,
Wow.
but she is so foundational. Her name was Nasreen,
Aw.
and you'll never meet a more selfless and kind and compassionate and brave person. And I'm a firm believer that death ends a life, but not a relationship. And so when my mom passed away, in an effort to get to know her story more, I started seeking out literature written by Iranian women telling the stories of Iranian women.
Wow.
And that really set a very important precedent for me to care more about these issues, but to also see my own lived experiences in the experiences of not just women in Iran, but of course the diaspora of women of Iranian descent around the world. And so it gave me this deep sense of appreciation, but also a commitment to fight for women's rights, to care about the intersectionality of our lives. And
Mhm.
that's why when I turned 18, I started getting really involved on my college campus with different advocacy organizations, and in particular, the Iranian Student Organization. My
Oh,
twin
wow.
sister and I were the president and vice president of ISO at my university. And
Okay.
this was during the green movement, and so
Mm.
every day we wore a green wristband, and I remember we collected human rights petitions, for this to showcase solidarity between the American students and students in Iran, and really just tried to uplift, the stories of those who are being persecuted in Iran, and of course, we do that to this day. But it was all started really in my mom's story, and just
Wow.
wanting to honor her through my own actions. And of course, I every day wear my fafahar, and this necklace in particular is very special to me because it was my mom's. And when she was getting really sick, my sister and I would always dig in her jewelry box. It was one of our favorite activities to do, and all these little treasures from Iran that were in this box. And so I put on this necklace, and I told myself I would not take it off until she got better, but she just never got better, so I never took it off. And so it is, my guardian angel is my mom, and everything I am or hope to be, I owe to her. And I wear this as a reminder of her hard work and sacrifice, and how I need to honor that through everything that I do.
Yeah, it really comes through in all of your work, and you constantly talk about it, and I find it so moving, and I can see that y'all are really honoring your mom. So thank you for sharing about her and doing that.
Thank you, Layla June.
Yeah, of course. And what was your so you were president of, or you and your sister were president of the Iranian Students Association. What drew you so much to Iranian things? Like, do you speak Persian? Did y'all do the traditions, all that?
Yes, it's another great question. Totally. Okay, so to be very candid, the Persian community in Florida is not that big, right, compared to other states. Now with that said, my parents, they were very insular. I mean, just because they work so much. I mean,
Right.
and a lot of our family is still in Iran. So, um, my family is kind of spread everywhere. And so I have family in Ohio, North Carolina, a little bit in California, Maryland, Tennessee, and then in Florida. And then everyone else is still in Iran. So I mean, my unfortunately growing up, the big family gatherings for us only happened, once a year, maybe
Right.
twice, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Nowruz, we always celebrated every year, but it typically was a small little gathering in the backyard,
Right.
for Tahash Shimasuri, and so my culture was always something very pronounced to me by my parents, especially my mom.
Right.
And just the connection to Iran was very important to my mom. She would sit down on the weekends and write long letters to her sisters back in Iran. And I remember she
Wow.
told me it would take 23 days for her sisters
Oh,
to get her letter, and then
wow.
23 days back. And again, I think one dynamic for our family was because we were working class, everything was very financially conservative. I mean,
Right.
even a call to Iran, we had to be fast. My mom would give me the phone, and I had 30 seconds to say hello. Like, everything was just really
That 30 seconds was probably $3 or something. It was expensive. It was very expensive.
exactly. I mean, the youngins this day do not
No.
understand. Like, we did not have Wi-Fi calls or,
No.
WhatsApp or
It was
anything like that. It
expensive.
it was so expensive. And so, those little moments, really stood out to me, but it also was this sense of importance. Like, oh my gosh, if we're gonna spend 30 seconds on a phone call, that means this call is really important and valuable, and I have to take it seriously, an opportunity to connect with loved ones that I actually never got to meet till I was 14 years old. My first time in Iran was bringing our mom's ashes to the Caspian Sea,
Wow.
and it was very overwhelming. I mean, so my Farsi is not perfect. I grew up in Orlando, and my brother actually spoke really good Farsi, but then he ended up struggling with English. And so he was in ESOL classes, and my
Watch
parents
it.
didn't want that to happen to my sister and I. So they ended up speaking more English with us. We had the reverse problem, right? Where our English was better, but our Farsi wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And so, I was actually introduced to you and your curriculum because my desire to get better at speaking Farsi. So that's why
Wow.
I love everything you do, because you create such a non-intimidating environment to learn Farsi, especially for
Aw,
first generation kids or second generation kids who just don't grow up with it as much because of the factors around, our own experiences. And
right.
so with that said, growing up, I didn't have any Iranian friends because there just weren't any other Iranian friends, beyond my sister and my brother. In fact, all
Wow.
through elementary school, everyone assumed we were Latina because that's
Yeah.
the larger community in Central Florida.
Right.
And I hate to say it, but my first experience with racism really happened after September 11th and that tragedy. And then all of a sudden, people knew I wasn't Latina anymore and I had to navigate those dynamics. But it also was around that time where I was getting to middle school and high school and I met my first Iranian-American friend who wasn't family. And so that was really, really awesome to start building that community. And then when I got to UCF, was thirsty for it. Was really hungry to find a cultural space. So that's kind of why we got more involved in those environments, was really just a desire to continue to be connected to our community and also advocate for human rights. Because I didn't want it to just be a cultural club. I wanted it to also be a club that is lifting up the voices of the diaspora and those in Iran who are yearning for freedom.
Cool. So then we know a lot about the experience of like California Iranians and stuff. I find it fascinating hearing about these different places like Texas, which I'm going to get into Texas and Florida in a minute. But yeah, was it like when you were younger, was it a pretty multicultural experience? Like, were people pretty accepting before 9/11? Like, you
Yeah.
said your mom was like so proud of being Iranian. Like, were people excited to hear about Iran and things like that?
Yeah, 100%. It's such a great question. So I remember in fourth or fifth grade, we had a cultural fair at school, and we had these little paper dolls that we had to decorate to represent like the cultural dress, of our communities. And so my sister did more of a Persian dress. I actually did more of a Turkish dress just because of my dad's Tabriz background. And
Right.
and so and we also didn't wanna do the same exact design, so we chose, like, complementary, communities, and the feedback was incredibly positive.
Cool.
Also just with Persian food, I everyone is always so interested in different
Yeah.
cultural food experiences. Now, I don't think the kids are, because I mean, let's be candid, even as a kid, like, I wasn't interested in ghormeh sabzi, not until I got older. But definitely, like, when it comes to making, tagine and rice or, masa khiyar, oh my god, everyone my brother would bring masa khiyar to school, and everybody wanted it.
Yeah.
Everybody, all the teachers wanted it, so my mom would, make batches for the teachers too.
Wow.
'Cause there's only, I'm not even kidding, for my entire childhood, there was only one Persian restaurant in the area, and it's, like,
Wow.
40 minutes away from us. It's called Alibaba in Longwood. Check it out if you're in town. We
Yeah.
have a few more options that have come and gone over the years, but Alibaba is, like,
Right.
our staple. They cater all of my Nowruz events, like, I always go to
Wow.
Alibaba, but it's definitely so unique in the sense that I had a lot of exposure to cultural diversity, um, but not so much my own culture. So that's why it was
Right.
so foundational at home for that
Interesting.
to be stressed. And then my sister and I, we love sharing Persian culture with others. So
Yes.
before COVID, we would host a really huge Chahar Shemasari party. And
Wow.
I can't tell you how many like non-Iranians would come, like 200 people,
Yeah.
and only, like, 3 of them were Iranian because everybody wanted to jump over a fire and just thought it was
Yeah.
so fascinating, to be a part of.
And I've seen you, like, cater sometimes Persian food in your office and have, like,
Oh,
Nowruz
yes.
events and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yes. Oh,
But now
yes.
I wanna shift into politics, so,
Oh
for
god,
all the
get
people that say,
ready.
"Stick to teaching Persian," or whatever, stop listening right now, but, basic
Teaching Persian is
yo,
innately political,
I
come
know,
on.
like, whatever. So I have this thing that I discovered. So I grew up in Texas, and Texas and Florida are very similar
Right.
in a lot of ways, in that the rest of the country, when they hear Texas and Florida, they're like, hell no. In a lot of ways.
Yeah, 100%. What's going on down there? What's in your water?
Yes, but you obviously love Florida and I love Texas. And I tell a lot of people, I'm like, it's very similar to the Islamic Republic. They're like, how could you live in a place with such terrible politics? I'm like, look, it's like the Islamic Republic. Like, Texas is not Greg Abbott in any
Right,
way. It's
right.
not that. Like, we have awesome people here, very, like, people are very open. A lot of people are open minded. Of course, there's like good and bad people everywhere, in Iran too. But Iran is not the Islamic Republic. And I think that, especially since the women life freedom movement, people have been seeing that more. It's just being
Oh, for
held
sure.
hostage by this like awful government. And same with Texas, same with Florida. So can you tell me about your experience with that? Like, Have you made that
Yeah.
connection before? You are a progressive person in politics in a country held hostage by these fucking idiots. I don't know if we're allowed to say that,
To put it
but
bluntly, yeah.
yeah, that you're constantly
Yeah,
fighting against. Have you made that connection before with that and like the Islamic Republic?
for sure. I mean, I think you're spot on to separate people from their governments, right? Because there are governmental systems and layers of oppression that prevent you from voting, that prevent you from your vote having any power, and of course build these uh, dynamics in power and control that don't reflect the perspectives, let alone the needs of everyday people. And just like how you love Texas, I love Florida. I mean, I think Florida is one of the most beautiful states in the union. We are surrounded by water. You know, every direction you look, you have a coastline. And Floridians are diverse people, they're scrappy people, they care about family, they care about hard work. And those were all values that really resonate with me. And as one quick example, we had an opportunity this past November. We were trying to codify reproductive freedom in our state constitution, as we unfortunately have a 6-week abortion ban right now. And our threshold to update the constitution is 60% passage, which is very high. So it's a long story of just really bad politics in the sense of what we were up against. But despite the millions of dollars in public money used to campaign against us, we secured 57% of the vote,
Oh my
which wasn't
gosh, wow.
enough to codify our freedoms, but it did send a strong message to say, whatever you read about Florida in the news, 57% of Floridians said the near total abortion ban needs to go. And so that kind of reminds me of how we have more in common than we think, but it is really important to build relationships. And a lot of people, when they first meet me, especially in the Iranian community, they assume that my district is very Iranian, right? And then they assume that my district is very minority based, because you do have, especially in parts like Michigan, California, like districts that are predominantly a specific minority community. My district is none of those things. My district is 70 some percent white, and then breaks down between historic African American communities. In fact, the first established African American town is in my district of the country, called Eatonville. I have Hannibal Square, another historic African American neighborhood that built Winter Park, another community in my district. And then we have a growing Latino community, and we also are home to Little Saigon and an API community that's thriving. And so I think it's really important to also ground ourselves. And again, the fact that we have more in common than we think. And when I would knock on doors, my first campaign, I never shied away from telling people that I was Iranian American. It's very important to me. And it would lead to these beautiful conversations as these now where people were like, oh my God, my first boss was Iranian, or I had an Iranian roommate, or my neighbor was, oh, they made beautiful, delicious food for me. And so it just starts leading to these memories, right? Of people's interactions with other Persians. And it just brought us together in a more meaningful way. It also opened up people's own immigrant stories. Because even if you're, you know, fourth generation American, at some point, you know, you had an immigrant background. And so leading with that as a part of my personal story helped me continue to build a relationship with Florida. And I even joked my very first campaign, I was like, I feel like I'm marrying the state of Florida right now. And I don't want to be left at the altar. So can you please, like, you know, help me make this marriage official? And so despite the politics, I have no plans to go anywhere else but to continue to support my community. We need fighters. We need people that are also just evidence-based and logic-driven. I did just get my PhD
Oh,
from
wow.
University of Central Florida, which is gonna
Congratulations.
make all of my ancestors proud because
Yeah.
obviously I
دکتره خانم دکتر.
exactly. I didn't become an MD, but I'm a PhD.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it's really funny. I think in my family, there's a lot of doctors, obviously, in all of our families, but there's only one PhD on my dad's side, one PhD on my mom's side.
Wow.
Both are great uncles who are still with me, and both of them text me like bragging rights. It's so funny, but you know, it's just a reflection of the potential I see in our communities. And as hard as the politics are, the work is so important, and
Yeah.
I'm so committed to keep doing it.
But now you have a hostile governor and you have a hostile president. So how
Yeah.
do you maintain hope and like what do you recommend for the rest of us? So that's kind of like as soon as, things started to get really really bad, I was like, I got to talk to Anna. I got to talk to her
Oh,
and see
yeah. Oh,
what's
yeah.
going on, what we should be doing, what you think. Is there any hope for us?
Yes. I mean, there's always hope, but hope has to be a verb. It's something that we have to build together. And this is gonna sound a little cheeky, but my piece of advice is, 1, to touch grass in the sense of don't be on
Yeah.
your phone all day. Like,
Okay.
put your phone down and, like, go back to the community roots. And I'll give you an example. So before I headed to Tallahassee, I attended a immigrant, forum. It was a not even a workshop. It was a table talk conversation with people who call Central Florida home that have mixed status, some who are undocumented, and it was a safe space for us to hear from impacted immigrant communities. What do they need right now? What are they thinking through? What are they struggling with? And the table that I was assigned, I sat next to a fellow Floridians who've called the state home for 20 plus years. They're business owners, but they don't have status. They have their daughter is an American citizen, but they don't. And I was listening to them describe what they're thinking, what they're facing, what they're navigating. And the first thought that came to my head was, they are so brave. And so to not victimize people who are impacted, but to really remember the power that each one of us have and the power that they're showing being in this community town hall, being so vulnerable and talking about how they are trying to navigate this situation. And it just makes me think about how anxious that, folks with privilege will sometimes express to me, which again I empathize with, and I'm here to navigate that too. But a part of it is, like, realize that you have so much power right now. Like, I know you're scared, but I'm talking to folks who are literally gonna be impacted by these policies, and yeah, they're nervous, but they're still going to work every day. Like, they are trying to figure this out, and they deserve us to have that same level of courage and bravery right now. And so to really find hope in the fact that even those who are impacted, they're not slowing down. And so we can't slow down either. And to know what our rights are, to practice accountability politics with those who are decision makers, to tell your stories. I mean, even the most recent controversy with President Trump's, freezes of federal dollars, what a nightmare. But what people forget is that we won that battle. They had to roll back what they were doing, and they didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because the backlash, because we all started lifting up the ripple effect in our vulnerable communities and our nonprofits that serve veterans, that serve seniors. And they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, okay, our bad. You know what I mean? And they're trying to pretend like they didn't mess up, but they did. And we won that fight. And now, again, there's so many fights we have to have. And I know it's overwhelming. So my second piece of advice is figure out what you're most passionate about, and master that. Because I do think if some of us have to pick all battles, right? Like I actually have a little cartoon on my desk that says choose your battles, and the response is I choose all of them. So some of us have to do everything, and that's on
Yeah.
us. But that's not required for every American who cares, right? And so
Yeah.
if you have a legal background and you want to help with immigrant rights, go do that. If you have tech experience and want to help a local nonprofit perfect their email systems to be more responsive, go do that, right? Like everyone has a skill, everyone has a talent, everyone has an interest, and so figure out what that is and just give it your all. Give it your all. I was at a coffee shop in my district, and there was a group of 4 women who live in a neighborhood called Baldwin Park, and they're starting a new, like, Baldwin Park Women's Democratic Club, and they're gonna show up to the school board meetings and defend our immigrant kids. They're going to raise money to support, families in these different situations who might lose funding and be impacted by decisions coming out of Health and Human Services. And so everyone has a role to play, and of
Yeah.
course, you can look towards elected officials like me for guidance, but just
Yes.
know that you're not alone, and that your voice is very, very needed right now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, we came from the Islamic Republic and now we're having to fight for women's rights here. It's
Yep.
crazy. But I know you have to go in a minute, so I have a million more questions for you. Hopefully we could do a part two sometime,
I would
not
love that.
10 years in the future. But tell us about your mayoral run and where people can find you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so I'm very excited to share that I have filed to run for mayor of
Woo!
Orlando. And
Amazing.
it's incredibly exciting as my hometown, as a community that is growing, but also has a really strong bully pulpit. Everyone knows where Orlando is.
Yeah.
Everyone realizes the importance that Orlando is in our state economy and national economy. Not every person knows the neighborhoods that call Orlando home, and just the importance of providing a responsive city government that prioritizes the needs of everyday people, but also provides economic prosperity that creates the vision that we're talking about, right? A
Mhm.
community where everyone can be their authentic selves and reach their fullest potential. So I'm really excited for this opportunity. It's quite historic. We've actually have had the same mayor for 20 some years. So he's
Wow.
announced his retirement, and it's going to be an open race with, I'm
Okay.
sure, many different types of candidates. But I feel very strong of our path forward.
Cool.
And if you want to learn more and support us, you can always visit our website, annafororlando.com. And I also have annaforflorida.com as my main state website. And you can find us on all the social media accounts, either Anna for Orlando or at Anna for Florida. But you'll find us, on all those
Yeah, and we'll
platforms.
link to all those on the show notes for this lesson, and you can
Fabulous.
watch Anna on her journey to fighting the man and being a thorn in the side of all these crazy people that we have in government right
A
now.
100%. A hundred
Constantly,
percent. And protecting our communities. That'll always be foundational to me. Government's
yes,
main job should be to keep people healthy and safe. And we're
yes,
seeing the opposite happen across the country right now.
yeah,
So we need those happy warriors on the ground who are going to
yeah,
hold the line and
exactly.
help get all of us through this. But
Because we
again,
see what happens when that doesn't happen.
yes, when the extremism takes over, I
We've
mean,
seen it. Yes, we've
we
experienced
have
it.
those lived experiences, and so let's make sure it doesn't happen to
Yeah.
to
But
the
I'm
the communities
so
we love.
proud of you. You are the definition of a Shirzan, a lion-hearted woman, really
Merci.
making a huge difference. And I love seeing your progress and seeing what you've been doing. So I really appreciate you talking with me today.
Merci,
And
Aziza.
I hope that we can talk soon.
Absolutely. See you soon.
All
Khudafiz.
right, Khodafis.